everybody. Welcome back to Reclaim You. We are officially in the holiday season, and we thought it'd be a good way to start out this season talking about something, heavy, but also very, very common and normal, and that's grief. Grief in the holiday season, how it shows up, where it shows up, so many places. So Casey's here chatting all about grief. Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
This is my favorite topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready.
Yeah. And I had a thought yesterday as we were decorating our Christmas tree, and I was pulling out ornaments, right? And I have all of these chocolate lab ornaments. And so for folks who don't know, which probably no one knows except for my clients, we lost our dog in August. And so I'm pulling out all of these ornaments, and I was like, oh, the grief is real, right? And my husband pulled one out. I was like, I don't know if I can look at that every day. And I know that you can relate to it's a similar experience. But yeah, I thought of you and I was like, yeah, the grief is real.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I had decorated my Christmas tree.
You did.
And I have my little cat ornaments, and I had to move my little baby cat's ashes to get everything set up, and a few tears here and there. And
for sure,
that's just, I think, a really good representation that it's normal, right? Like, unfortunately, we lost both of our animals and like very close to one another, and
we did.
I think it's a beautiful thing, as sad as it is. Take some credence in the fact that you have a similar experience, and that's one of the most important things in talking about grief, is realizing that everybody experiences it in one way or another. It may not look the same, it may not be the same loss, but we all feel random bouts of grief and sadness, and even a smile here and there. I mean, I looked at those ornaments and I was like, oh, they're so cute.
They're so cute.
So cute. And, I think the holidays is one of those target seasons, because it's full of love. It's full of family. It's full of, this proposed happiness, right? And tradition and all of those things where we remember, who's not here to celebrate it? Or can I not see my family this year to celebrate it? Or do I not have the money to celebrate it? Like a loss of finances or stability, even like grieving an eating disorder, right?
Yeah.
And challenging that during the holidays can be tough. And all of that is valid, but it's kind of like, the hell do you do with it? Right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those tough ones. What do you do with it?
What do you do with it? Yeah. It's kind of like a lot of times, like, I don't want to feel this, right? Like yesterday, right? We're decorating the tree. It's fun. And my son is going crazy with the ornaments, right? Putting them all in that one spot, which is hysterical. I'm like, spread them out, man. Spread them out. And pulling them out. We have so many chocolate lab ornaments, right? Like we got one a year for years. Some were okay, and some were like, ugh, like I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I want to look at that every day, because it's like heart wrenching, because he was my guy. He was my guy. So we chose to put one back in the box. We still have like 7, but there's this one that just got me, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can. So we put it away to keep it safe and kind of out of the line of vision for now. Who knows? But yeah, it's like sometimes you just don't want to feel it, and you're still going to feel it.
Yes. I think grief is one of those ones where, it hits when you don't want it to. You feel the feelings you don't want to, and there's not necessarily a great solution, because it's not something that needs to be solved.
Right.
And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand. And there's a reason for that, right? We live in a society where, you get one day of bereavement if it's a non-immediate family member. And whatever. What about a loss of, I don't know, other things that isn't included in your bereavement package or whatever?
Right.
So what does that tell us? Like, oh, I need to get my shit together before I go back to work.
Right. Like bottle it up, get over it, whatever you got to do to show up as like quote unquote normal life.
Exactly. When it's not that. And I think it supports a lot of the podcasts we've already done, where we live in a society that has taught us that having feelings outside of neutral and positive is means there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? And we need to hide you. You feel it in private and then you come back to real life. But in reality, I want everybody to know that that's incorrect. That's what led us to a society with rampant mental health issues and shame and guilt, because we're not allowed to live in the way that is authentic as a human.
Mm-hmm.
So I think practicing feeling it in privacy is great.
Yeah.
And also realizing that maybe you don't have to feel your grief in front of somebody, but acknowledging your grief.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you said talking about Taylor automatically like allowed me to connect and feel safe, because I don't talk about the loss of my cat with many people.
Yeah.
You know, and people be like, oh, it's just a cat.
Just an animal. Right?
Just a dog, just a turtle, or griefs that have happened like 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
You should be over that by now, you know, all the quintessential judgments. But recognizing that if you have tears, if you have anger, if you have a moment where you just feel like shit,
yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
it's a wave that needs to pass. And I think the thing that we as a society also put into the ether is everything has to be fixed.
Yeah.
Right? Like grief has a solution.
Mm.
Well, the only solution would be to bring back what has been lost.
Right.
And that's not happening right now. I mean, if it's a non-person, you know, maybe that would happen. But if it's a person, that's not happening. So how do you expect your grief to be treated if that's not changing?
Yeah. It's like that meme on the internet that, I don't know if I said this on the last grief podcast. If I did, I'm sorry, but, and I'm not going to say it very well, but it's like you're baking, and the butter, you put the butter in the dough and you have to knead it, right? The grief is like the butter, like it kneads into the dough and gets evenly distributed. So it just kind of, I don't know, it just is. It's there, it's present, but it's not as, you know, big and scary as just looking at this thing with like a pile of butter on top. That's totally not the meme.
I love that.
I'm gonna have to find it. Maybe it'll help me explain it better.
Because you know I love baking.
Yes,
and
you do.
know I love talking about grief. So that's like the best meme. The one that I usually use, you know, this is a segment of the podcast we are calling, I don't know, analogies of grief. Dun, dun, dun. I usually talk about the boulder, right?
The boulder's a good one.
It's a huge boulder and then it breaks up and you might just have a rock or a pebble in your pocket. But remembering that it's always there. You are forever changed by your grief, or by your loss, rather, not by your grief, your loss. And we don't like things that can't change. We don't like that as humans. We want control. We want, you know,
predictability. And a fix. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think, you know, during the holidays, we feel this because we love, we care, we are connected. And when we lose connection to things or to abilities or to stability, it's not fun. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, number one, I think, is acknowledging it, you know, tips and tricks. I know that seems easy, but a lot of the time we totally are in denial from the fact that we are grieving.
Right. Which is a symptom of grief, which is, you know, just there it is, right? Or like guilt, you know, guilt, that waves of guilt that come and go of, I could have, I should have, I wish I had, or, you know, anger, those stages of grief, right? The classic stages of grief, but to acknowledge when they're present as a symptom of feeling significant grief over whatever it is that you've lost.
And taking the time, you know, obviously we can't just take a vacation to grieve. I mean, if you have the ability to do that with your job, I fully encourage it. But most people don't. And I just think like treating grief, I mean, we can get into this in a different podcast, but treating your emotions as a part of your health, right? If you're sick and you have the flu, you're in bed. you're getting fluids, you're
Mm-hmm.
binge watching whatever TV show you enjoy. Mental health can be treated the same way.
Yeah.
Like rest, recharge, do something that feels good to you. But also, if you want to sit in bed for a while, that's okay. If you want to like avoid it for a while and then come back and feel it, like that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to, and hopefully throughout our careers, we are getting this accomplished, seeing mental health as health,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there is a protocol for resting and recharging and supporting yourself. But if you never acknowledge the feelings are there, it's like an infection
Yeah.
and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so if you're feeling really, 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 really shitty after years of doing that, that's okay, right? That's your body telling you that.
Yeah.
And grief is one of those places that I've noticed in my work is one of those that bursts the bubble,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the one that really gets it going.
Yeah.
And I think, in a weird way, is that a good thing? Like, is that an invitation to
Mm-hmm.
really see yourself and hear
Yeah.
yourself? And, you know, I think that can be a bonus, if
Mm-hmm.
anything. I know it sounds terrible, but
Yeah.
it's true.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just normalizing. I I always laugh when I have those times in sessions where I'm like, you're not going to like this answer. And
Uh-huh.
grief is when I always have those. It's like
Yeah.
you're not going to like it,
Yeah.
but it's going
Yeah.
to make you feel better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's like feeling into it grows your capacity to feel, right? To
Hmm.
acknowledge when it's there, to acknowledge when it's present, to acknowledge when you don't have the capacity for it. Maybe in doing that and being really kind of compassionate and open with yourself about it expands the capacity to be with it when it's present and you have the time and the space to feel into it.
Mm, yeah. Which also makes me think of like, just being aware of when those parts are coming through that, have been developed by, I don't know, family who has told you feeling is bad,
Yeah.
or that your job has frowned upon feeling, or, just this internal dialogue you have that you shouldn't be a feeling human,
Yeah.
and recognizing maybe what that's protecting you from, and,
Mm.
deciding, do I need this in this space in my home right now, or can I put that to the side and feel and check in with myself?
Yeah.
After a good cry,
Mm-hmm.
you feel better. I
You
mean, it
too.
doesn't change, but your body feels better. Yes, and
Mm-hmm.
your body will thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking about all of the kind of sneaky ways that grief comes up during the holiday season. Of course, with our pets that we've lost, that's a pretty significant one. And yes, important figures in our lives are no longer with us. But how else? Let's talk about that a little bit. How else grief can kind of sneak in when maybe you don't even realize that it is grief.
Mm. The one that I'm thinking about that, you know, maybe has touched me in some way, but has been brought out in conversation is just grief about the world we live in.
Yeah.
Like I think about the holidays and all the privileges that I have, that other people don't,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's safety, and that's in the realm of physical safety, financial safety, emotional safety, and people don't have that. And you might not have that, anybody listening. And if you don't, I'm so sorry, because, those are the things, losing your safety, whether that's through having to, you know, relocate or set a boundary or financials or what have you. That's a really underspoken one. Another one is your health.
Mm-hmm.
If things have happened to you physically where your abilities have changed, I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
Financial loss, I think
Yeah.
that's a really, really big one, especially with the inflation that we're living in today,
Mm-hmm.
going through the holidays and, realizing that a dollar doesn't spread as far as it used to. And,
Mm-hmm.
that the holiday you had 5 years ago is not the same type of holiday you have now. Loss of coping skills that you used to
Mm-hmm.
use, right? So anybody
Mm-hmm. Loss
who
of your eating disorder. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
is getting sober, clean, and recovered
Mm-hmm.
from an eating disorder, like those are all valid, especially,
Mm-hmm.
it's a high urge rate
Mm-hmm.
during this time of year, no matter what, coping skill you were using. And missing that is okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Of
Like,
course you do, right? Of course.
absolutely. That makes perfect sense.
I'm thinking even of the romanticized version of, or the idealized version, I don't know, either way, of the holiday season and what it like should look like. And
Mm,
I know in the past I've fallen into this trap of, yes, I want it to look this way. It will be this way. It will be like the Hallmark, Instagram, whatever holiday. Everyone's getting along. Everything's joyful and wonderful and right. And there
mm,
is this sense of grief. It's like when it smacks you in the face. Oh, wait, real life actually isn't like that.
mm. Oh, that's so valid and
Mm-hmm.
so real. And that can be for aesthetic, it can be
Mm-hmm.
for familial,
Mm-hmm.
and these expectations that we have around all of the things in the holidays,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, trying to, the symptom that I see coming from that sometimes is people staying in situations family wise and things like that to keep appearances, to salvage that vision that they have of
Mm-hmm.
all the family
Mm-hmm.
sitting at the table,
Yep.
and realizing that you're no less of a person if that's not what you have.
Right. Right.
Just like you're no less of a person if your aesthetics in your home, I have a Charlie Brown tree. I'll show
Love
you
it.
a picture someday.
Yes.
But it used to be purple, and I got it at Walmart back when I was a broke college student, and it's 4 feet tall. And then I got a
Mm-hmm.
free one from my parents, and it looks really sad. But I looked at it yesterday. I was talking to my husband. I said, you know what? This is me. Like, this tree feels like me. The
Mm-hmm.
big 7 foot with all the thingies on does not feel like me. So, going back to the authenticity podcast,
Yeah.
recognizing what feels good to you now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that is good,
Yeah.
right? And making the most of the family that feels safe to you and is supportive to you, and, you know, making what you have enough.
Yeah.
It's the not enoughness that
Yeah.
happens all the time. And the holidays is just another excuse from society to pound you down and say, you're not enough.
Right. Right. You should be this way. You should be doing this, that, whatever it is. Totally.
Hmm. And
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that you're allowed to feel however you want anytime, but especially, when you grieve that expectation that, when you're comparing yourself to other people, which try not to do, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good time. Um,
No, it's not a good time. No.
that will not lead you to no good things. But feeling that, like, I want that, or especially folks who have experienced trauma, wanting to give your family better than you had, and realizing that maybe some of the remnants of your past are still here.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's
That's
so
okay.
funny you say that because I was joking with my family over the weekend. My husband is really like taking the outside of our house to a whole new level this year. And we are joking about it. And I was like, I really think this is just Casey's inner child that's needing
Oh.
some like, I don't know, inflatable stuff, whatever. And he'd probably disagree. But, it's just interesting to think about, like different life circumstances. And we are, lucky enough to be able to, have the money to buy inflatables for our kids and
Yeah.
things like, and for my husband, because apparently that's what he loves. But it's interesting to think of like, okay, how are some of these things feeding, parts of you that maybe didn't get what, you wish that they had way back when, your caregivers, your parents, whoever it was, may have done the very best they could. Maybe they also didn't. But, maybe there was a part of you that still wanted something a little bit different, something a little bit more.
Yes. And if you're still not getting that, I'm sorry. And that's okay if the circumstances are causing that to happen, right? If, you know, you're not getting the emotional connection that you want from somebody, and the holidays is just a reminder that you're not getting that.
Yeah.
It's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel it. It's okay. Because I think it's just, again, a supporter of like, what do I need in this time? What do I need to support myself? What people do I need to go to in order to feel safe feeling this stuff?
Yeah.
Right. And it might just be you at first, or it might be a therapist, or it might be a close friend or family member. But acknowledging it is so important. You can acknowledge it and do nothing with it. That's okay.
Yeah. Totally.
Acknowledge it just a little bit, but just recognizing that it's there is listening to yourself, which we don't do enough, myself included.
Of course,
I'll
all
take
of us.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that comes in seasons, right? Like sometimes we're able to, sometimes we're not.
Right. So I think, it's feeling feelings, especially during the holidays, revolves a lot around grief, but recognizing that grief is a normal human response to loss. Okay. Really want people to take that home. A normal human response. Right? And all of the ways in which that shows up, or we resist it, or we ignore it, is all okay.
Yeah.
Right. But when it becomes too much, listen to your body. If that's, sometimes that's the easiest thing to do first.
Yeah.
Is what feels tense, what feels uncomfortable, and then what would feel good. Right? Maybe we don't have to go to the emotions exactly, but maybe we can just go to how it feels in the body.
Yeah.
And that could be enough. And also, if you feel like a Grinch during the holidays, that's okay too.
Right.
We're talking about enjoying the holidays. And all of the things.
Yeah.
But if you don't, that's okay too. And if your grief is causing you to not feel enjoying of it, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
That's okay. And I hope that changes for you when you feel ready for it to change.
Yeah, fully acknowledging that this is a really hard time of year for a lot of people, right? The celebrations, the traditions, the family of origin, the loss, right? It's a lot to sit with and be faced with, alongside of, just like we talked about, the pressure of society for it to be and look a certain way, or for you to be and look a certain way, to have to be grateful, to have to be joyful, to have to be all of these things. When, if that's not your truth and your reality, like, that's cool. You have to do what you have to do to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Full permission to do that. This feels like a nice hug and a break.
Yes.
This whole thing, right? It's like, give yourself a break. Grief is the last thing you should be giving yourself pressure to do, or to do it right, or give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Especially during the holidays of whatever you're feeling, whatever is happening. We're human and imperfect naturally.
And the waves will roll in, right? The waves of grief, over how grief shows up in a million different ways, will come crashing, and then they'll recede, right? And you get a little break, and then they'll come back. That's just what emotions do.
They do. And that's okay.
Anything else you feel like you want to add about the holiday season, grief?
Well, since I won't be on the podcast for the holidays, I hope that everyone enjoys their holidays. I hope that you feel whatever you need to feel, you feel supported in that, and give yourself grace and permission to do whatever feels good for you.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Casey will be back in the new year, 2024, after our holiday series with all the other folks in the practice. So yeah, she'll be back then. And until next week, take good care of yourself.